Watch the #6 global sales thought leader and author of the hot new sales book, The First Meeting Differentiator, Lee Sells, walk through why you're killing your pipeline, killing your deals, and missing your quota. Lee's hot take is that the way you and I run discovery calls today needs to die. There's a better way to run that first meeting as a consultation that's going to blow up your pipeline and help you crush your quota and make more commission and upgrade in your career.
Lee Sells. What a treat to have you on the podcast. How's your day going so far?
The honor's mine. Day is awesome.
Let's get right into it, man. We're going to talk about how to run a great consultation, not a discovery call, but we'll start out using the term discovery call because a lot of people know of it.
Absolutely. That is the commonplace word, isn't it?
It is. And we're going to talk about why the discovery call needs to die, at least the traditional version. But first, let's set a context. Why does the quote unquote discovery call matter so much? Some people say it's the epitome of the sales cycle. So why is it important to win the discovery call to win the deal?
Yeah. So the first meeting is the deal foundation. There's so much that's going on in that first meeting. We're acquiring information. We're sharing information. Hopefully we're differentiating ourselves in a meaningful way. We're engaging their emotions. We're providing meaningful value. So much is going on in that first meeting. And that, like I said, is the deal foundation. If your first meeting is weak, I can tell you how the finish line is going to turn out, and you're not going to like it. So what I find is a lot of salespeople looking for these manipulative, creative closing techniques, like some magical words that make the checkbook pop open. It's 2025. That's not going to happen. If you're not happy with your win rate, go back and look at how you're handling that first meeting, because like I said, it's the foundation of your deal. Just like a building. If your foundation is weak, what's going to happen? The whole building comes tumbling down. Same thing with your deal.
Why does traditional discovery need to die? And I will say too, what does traditional discovery the wrong way look like? And then so if you flip the order, my friend, what's it look like and why does it need to die?
Okay, so if you think about how salespeople prepare for traditional discovery, I'm going to make a list of the questions I'm going to ask, the message points I'm going to share. And you're probably thinking, well, what's wrong with that? Well, here's my big question. If I agree to take a meeting with you, what do I get out of it? And I'll receive a deafening silence from the salespeople when I first ask that. They'll say, oh, wait. Well, they'll learn about my company and what we offer. That's a big fail.
Lee, how about this one? You get to help me sell to you.
Oh, even better. Yeah. Not taking that meeting either. So we don't think about the meaningful value that we provide during those first meetings. That's the flaw, or one of them anyway, in discovery. So if you look at what we're asking people to do, we're saying, I want you to take a meeting with me. I've got 400 things to do on my desk. And you're saying, put those aside and meet with me. And what I'm going to get out of that is learning about your stuff. Now, the problem with that is there's two types of sales. And I'm going to use a bathroom environment to depict those two. You ready?
I'm ready.
You buy toilet paper. I sell toilet paper. But you're buying my competitor's toilet paper. And I'm saying you should be buying my toilet paper because it's superior. That's a takeaway sale. That's the environment most salespeople are in. Let me give you the other sale type. You buy toilet paper, I sell bidets. It's an alternative way of addressing an issue. That's a demand gen sale. Like I said, most salespeople are in this takeaway sale environment, meaning they already have a provider in place. So you're saying to me, take the 400 things that you have to do on your desk, put them aside, and the only meaningful value I'm going to get is learning about your stuff when I already have a provider in place. That's just not going to happen. That, again, is one of the flaws of looking at that first meeting through the lens of discovery. But if you think about the times when you've gone to the doctor, you go to the doctor for two reasons: to become wiser about your circumstances and to understand potential remedies. You sure wouldn't go there if you thought that entire experience was for the doctor's benefit. They're going to get all this data and nothing for you. That's what discovery is. Everything for the salesperson and nothing for the person they're meeting with. Now, let's come back to this whole meaningful value thing. What do they want if they're going to take that meeting? They want to learn something that helps them in their role helps their company, or best of all, helps both. That's if they're going to take that meeting. And once you define what that meaningful value is, you fold that into your prospecting messaging. So, Chris, when we get together, I'll share with you a best practice that manufacturing executives are using to creatively reduce costs. Oh, if I take a meeting with Lee, I'm going to learn something. I'll take that meeting. Now, I'm going to guess your audience loves free things. Every audience does. Everyone does.
Everyone loves free things.
Okay, so I'm going to give you a URL. It's going to be hard for everybody to remember. You ready?
Yes.
Meaningfulvalue.com. Meaningfulvalue.com. If you go there, I've got a free tip sheet. 10 ways to provide meaningful value during those first meetings.
We've got that linked in the description of this video, along with your new book. And I in the hook intro, I plugged it, but give us a plug of the title, and I'd love to hear it from you.
Yes. So the first meeting differentiator, the inspiration there was exactly what we're talking about. Is we're looking at these first meetings through this lens of discovery and have no appreciation for the individual's time that we're meeting with, because we're not saying, boy, we've got to provide some meaningful value there. And back to what we said a moment ago, this is the deal foundation. What I found fascinating was there's literally thousands of books written on prospecting, how to get a meeting.
Yes.
Find a book that says, okay, what's the recipe? How do I put together a strategy, a game plan for that meeting once I've landed it? Didn't exist. I couldn't believe it. You can go on Amazon and prove me wrong. There is now. It's called the First Meeting Differentiator. Like, a lot of books are out there saying, here's some questions to ask, or here's storytelling. But one book that doesn't say how to get the meeting or what to do after, it's the meeting itself.
So to all our friends out there reading New Sales Simplified from our guy, Mike Weinberg, who's been on the podcast, or Fanatical Prospecting from Jeb Blunt, who's been on the podcast. Yeah, you get in the meetings, but you need to run the consultation, the first meeting, effectively, because it does make the difference on whether the sales cycle ultimately shortens, lengthens, and really closes in a competitive market. So I love that you use the term differentiator. You're taking a completely different approach, and you are a contrarian. And I kind of like that about your personality. That's not my natural personality. But what does that mean, Lee, when you're like a sales contrarian? We saw an example with like discovery needs to die, the way it's being done. But give us more on like what makes you a contrarian in this space.
Absolutely. And I did want to mention, Jeb and Mike both endorsed the book. And I've been on the Sales Gravy podcast, and I've been interviewed on Mike Weinberg's podcast. And I can't tell you how many people in my space have said to me, I can't believe I didn't think to write this book. Such a gap, such an opportunity to help salespeople. So that's been pretty neat.
Yeah.
But let's come back to your question about sales contrarian. There's a lot of stuff we have fed salespeople. We've told them these things, these concepts, and they're just flat out wrong. I'll give you one, Chris. You ready for a fill in the blank?
Yes.
You're only as good as your blank sale.
Last.
Worst thing we ever said to salespeople. Think about what that means. Celebrate yesterday. Don't worry about tomorrow. The expression should be, you're only as good as your next sale, because there's always juice to be squeezed. So you bring in a piece of business today, yay, that's great. But we've always got to be thinking, how do we compound that? And so what I share is what I call the business developer's mantra. Every deal must yield two more. So if you buy into that expression that you're only as good as your next sale, couple that with that mantra, you look at, okay, I brought in a piece of business today, great. There's more juice to be squeezed. How do we get two more deals out of it?
Appreciate you getting us thinking about how to squeeze the most juice out of our sales career. And hey, the same thing will happen with our life as a result, as a byproduct.
I'll give you another one, Chris. You ready?
I'm ready, man. And wrangle us in and direct, my friends. I want to hear this.
Sales is a numbers game. How many times have you heard that one?
I tell people that. Make more dials, you're going to have more conversations. Our boy Mark Hunter says selling is having conversations, and yet flip it on its head. What do you say otherwise?
I disagree.
Okay.
I believe you can prospect too much. If you can't personalize the outreach and you're just focused on quantity with no quality, don't bother. It's 2025. There was a study done by the Rain Group. I don't know if you saw this, where executives were asked if they've ever taken a meeting from a salesperson that reached out to them through some form of prospecting. Have you seen that one?
Yes, I have.
Do you remember the percentage?
No, but here's what I remember. Like, I've just had this ingrained in me. It's like, it's mostly warm intros that they'll take meetings for warm intros. Okay.
Nope.
Am I right? Okay.
Different study. This one said 82% of executives said, yes, I took a meeting with a salesperson that reached out to me through some form of prospecting.
Oh, really?
But the study didn't end there. They got the secret sauce, the key ingredient, personalization. If you're sending generic emails, leaving generic voicemails, or having generic conversations when you connect with them live, you're not going to be in that 4 out of 5 group. So back to what I said a moment ago, you can prospect too much. Now, I do believe that there is a lot to be quantified and measured in sales. But if we exclusively look at sales through the lens of a numbers game, you treat people like a number, and no one wants to feel that way.
Another thing that's contrarian, I believe, that you say is that once you have a pain, that's enough for a deal. And I'm pretty sure it's you who said it's not enough. Can you tell us where your head's at there?
Yeah. So when you think about what we've told salespeople, if you find a pain, you're going to get the deal, right? We've heard that forever in the sales world. The problem with that is a little story I'll share with you. You ready?
Yes.
Stephen Harmon, he's a salesperson for ABC Enterprises, and he has his consultation, a first meeting with a prospective client, Nicole Jameson. And during that first meeting, Nicole talked about issues with her current provider, talked about her frustrations. And as she did, Stephen starts to salivate, right? Because, oh, yeah, I'm finding pain. I'm going to get this deal.
Fears.
Yeah. So after me, he goes home and he's sitting on his deck and he's like, wow, this is it. This is the whale. This is going to be the commission check I've wanted. And I'll finally get that boat that I've been dreaming about. He tells his wife, he's like, I got it. We're getting the boat. She gets all excited too. So the next day, he goes into the office. He opens his email, and there's a message from Nicole. Hey, Stephen, thank you so much for your time yesterday. After further thought, we've decided to stay with our current provider. But if anything changes, I'll be back in touch. You're nodding your head, and I'm guessing our listeners are going, I've lived that. We all have. And so Stephen's just staring at his PC like, what just happened here? This doesn't make any sense. I found pain. And his boat just sunk. So where did he go wrong? He heard pain and he assumed that she was prepared to do something about that pain. Pain. Has there been a book written, a blog post, a video that didn't talk about if you find pain, you're going to get the deal? They're all out there. So are all the sales pundits wrong? No. Their counsel is incomplete. We have to take the conversation deeper to find out if the pain we've heard is an inconvenience or a problem. And those aren't synonymous, are they?
No. Is it I've heard it said, what is it? Is it a vitamin or a painkiller? And I know, and maybe you challenge that, but like there's a difference between a true pain, right? And that also has a timeline tied to it as well, right?
Well, an inconvenience, it's a nuisance. We talk about it, we complain about it, but we don't do anything about it until it elevates to the level of a problem. Then and only then are we willing to invest time, resources, and dollars to address it. I'll share with you another little story. True story. So we got a puppy during COVID, as a lot of people did. My little cockapoo, she loves listening to when I do these podcasts. She's taking a little snooze. And she's the sweetest little thing. Chris, I wake up every morning. She gets on top of my head, reaches down, and gives me little kisses on my nose. Best way to start the day. You asked how my day was. That's how my day started. But she does have an idiosyncrasy. She loves to go in our dining room, and the windows face the street. And anytime someone walks by, particularly if they're walking a dog, she goes nuts. She runs laps around the dining room table, up the stairs, down the stairs, around the table, up there, just nonstop until they're out of sight. Well, this one day, we didn't open the blinds in the dining room to Kona's satisfaction. They were open enough that you could tell somebody was walking by. So she does a lap around the table and starts pawing at the blinds because she wants to see her new friend. So at the end of that day, I had a set of blinds, and now a sheet covering the third window because it was completely destroyed. Stayed that way for a year. Now I know what our listeners, what? You had a sheet on your dining room window for a year? Chris, when did I say this happened? COVID.
Oh, COVID, yeah.
There was nobody coming to visit.
Yeah.
The dining room's not even in the main traffic pattern of the house. We never even go in there. But Chris, then it happened. My wife comes to me. She says, honey, my parents are coming to visit. Paul and Gail are coming to town. There is no way there's going to be a sheet on that window when they arrive. They'll take their daughter and their grandkids out. They'll take them with them back to Florida. In an instant, that issue went from an inconvenience to a problem. There was a motivator there. Now I was going to do something about it.
Lee's giving us all the knowledge to run better discovery, and you gotta get the book. But what do you do with that knowledge? How do you turn it into action and better results? You turn to a coaching program like Tech Sales Accelerator, where we're working with top AEs at Splunk, Databricks, Snowflake, and AEs in the startup world to actually implement these skill sets and sharpen them to up-level in their careers. If you're ready for personalized, tailored accountability and coaching, then book time with me at my Calendly link, linked in the description of this video. I'd love to have a conversation with you to understand your challenges, your goals, and map out a plan to hit them. All right, let's get back to the episode.
Such a great example of illustrating the difference between an inconvenience and a true problem we're solving. And if it's a true problem, you're not going to get the, oh, we're okay with how we are after the discovery call. Things are going to progress. Now, I have a ton of other questions for you.
Well, I just want to share one other piece to help our listeners. So I developed an acronym for the word pain that will help you remember that difference.
Oh, cool.
PA, problem, action, IN, inconvenience, neutral. If it's a problem, they're going to do something about it. If it's an inconvenience, come back 5 years from now, it'll be the exact same circumstance unless it elevated to the level of a problem.
Okay, I love that PAIN acronym. So thank you for throwing that in there. And I said I had a bunch of questions and I want to go in different directions because I am curious.
I can dance wherever you want to go.
I love to dance. Come on. And so you're great at coming up with intriguing questions, helping people cover intriguing questions to qualify. We can go there. I did want to get back because value is a part of this conversation. Yeah. And there's a dance between value and discovery. Asking thoughtful questions in a consultation and first meeting, not discovery. That's dead. Right. So maybe we could choose two paths, right? Do you want to share more on the path to like actually setting up a great consultation, preparing for it to bring value, or go into asking intriguing questions in the qualification component?
I will follow your lead. We can go wherever you'd like.
We'll get to the qualification in a second. Okay. Then we'll back to it. But is there anything else you would add in terms of how we prepare to deliver value and to make our prospects wiser, which is what they expect in a consultation?
Yeah. I mean, that's got to be a foundation requirement. If I'm going to get someone to take a meeting, and then my goal in a first meeting, my overarching theme is to pique a high enough level of interest that they want to keep interacting with me afterwards. Most salespeople are not expected to come out of a first meeting with an order. And if we don't handle the first meeting right, there won't be a second meeting. What that tells you is you don't have to ask every question. You don't have to tell them everything about your company and what you offer. What you do need to do is ask the right questions and share the right information. Well, what does right mean? Well, again, back to the issue with a discovery mindset. Make a list of questions. Well, there's an infinite number of questions you could ask, and only so many someone's going to tolerate before they say enough. You could talk about your company and what you offer for 16 hours, but no one's going to give you a 16-hour meeting, and I don't think you'd want one anyway. That's the problem when we think of planning in that fashion. So what I talk about in the book, and there's a chapter dedicated to it, is reverse engineering the first meeting and challenging yourself with this question. It was a great first meeting if I accomplished what? What are the outcomes that would have made this first meeting a success? Because again, we're not walking out with an order. So what information do I have to learn during that first meeting? And we're going to talk about qualifying in a little bit.
Awesome.
Potentially to qualify as a piece. What information do I need to share? So what happens is, imagine a matrix. Left-hand column, here's all the outcomes I need to achieve. Across the rows, what questions am I going to ask? What information am I going to share? What actions am I going to take? So now it becomes a project plan. What questions am I going to ask? Only the questions tied to outcomes I've identified. What information am I going to share? Only the information tied to the outcomes I've identified. What actions am I going to take? The actions tied to the outcomes that I've identified.
It's all tied to the end state, the outcomes you've identified. So I love that you gave us a filter, because even preparing for this interview, I came up with a laundry list of questions that was impossible to get to in the time that we have. And it's the same with discovery calls. And you need to prioritize the right questions, the right information, and ultimately aligns to the North Star of what the ideal next steps are. So I'm curious, as we enter into the dance of the discovery, because we're using that metaphor today. And by the way, I'm sorry, there's people like partying in the room next to me. It's a conference room. I don't know I don't know if
I don't hear it.
Hey, good. Because I'm like, gosh, I was going to mute myself. So great. But they're having fun. They're loving the topic.
Well, since there's a party next to you, Chris, every time you say the word discovery, we got a drink. So I've got a giant flask here of water. Every time you say discovery, we got a drink. Okay.
And I've got a coffee I can drink. So yeah. So remember, this is good for reinforcement for the audience. What do we call it, Lee?
It's a consultation. The first meeting is a consultation.
Okay. So as we enter into the consultation, we have set out like the questions, the information we want to share, the end state has been determined. This is a technical question, but when we start see, I'm having like, I don't want to say it wrong. Did you see?
I was ready to take a drink.
I was going to say conversation, but that's not bad.
Consultation. Yeah.
So when we started, there are things I do. I check the time. I want to respect time. Lee, we set aside 30 minutes. Does that still work for you? Do you have a hard stop? I put together an agenda structure to make the most of our time. I'd love to share with you and get your feedback and stuff like that. I'm just curious, what do you encourage people to do to start the consultation on the right foot?
Okay, so what discovery tells us is we should set an agenda, right? That's the best practice with discovery. I said it, so now I got a drink.
Well, okay, but you're saying the old way.
In that context, that's okay.
Yeah. You're saying the old way, though. You can say it if it's the old way.
Yes. Yeah. And it sounds like this. Chris, what I want to do today is ask you some questions about your business, and then I'll tell you a bit about what we have to offer. What I want to do today, we've just convinced them, it's not theoretical anymore. We've convinced them that the purpose of this meeting is for me, what I want to do today. No interest in what they want. I want. That expression is an instant turnoff. Rule of thumb, Chris, there's only one person in the world who cares what you want. Do you know who that is?
You.
Nope, your mom. Nobody else cares what you want.
She does. And I told her we're having this podcast, by the way. I'm in Naples, Florida. I know your family went to Florida, but I actually told her I'm talking to Lee. She's excited. She watches all of these. So love you, Mom. Anyway.
That's awesome. Right? And she cares what you want.
Yeah.
Now, if we want to differentiate ourselves, create a totally different message to start that meeting, we're not going to make a statement. We're going to ask a question. Chris, for this to be a great use of your time today, what do you want to make sure we talk about? And that does two things. Number one, the answer could chart the course for the entire meeting. And you've just conveyed in the first few seconds of that meeting that you genuinely care that they get meaningful value out of that interaction. So that's how you would start a consultation rather than a discovery. Discovery, we're going to make a statement. I'm actually working on a document now where I'm just going through all the differences between a discovery and a consultation for a first meeting.
It's not about the perfect script or agenda or a performance to start. It's just getting to the meat and potatoes of that question. What do you care about? Because what that sub communicates is you as a seller, you care, And it gives you the opportunity to hit the bullseye and make a good use of their time in the consultation. So that I love that you kind of cut the fluff and just gave us what really matters.
And you could also do a hybrid, Chris. You could also say, if you don't want to just blindly ask that question. So, Chris, what I was planning to do today was A, B, and C, and then lead into the question. For this to be a great use of your time, what else would you like to make sure we talk about today?
I like that. That's a great option for the audience to say, this is my plan, but what would you like to cover? And that's, you know what, Lee, before I went all in on this journey with podcasting and everything, I was a seller, and I would give them the option, like you just said. And a lot of times they want to hear what I have to bring to the table. So we got to be ready for that, to bring the value that you talked about. So now and I'm being kind of logical, by the way, which we're going to blow up that a logical approach is the way to do it. But I'm just thinking, my logical brain's like, what's the order of operations? Yeah. In terms of, because you're going to share value, but we need to qualify. And so is it the value comes first in your mind? And I will acknowledge, you asked that question, they're going to dictate where it goes. And so you need to dance, as we said, but what's the order of operations for the call?
So one of the objectives, when we talked about outcomes before, that we want to accomplish during a first meeting, is to be able to make a go, no-go decision. The worst thing that can happen is we invest a ton of time chasing a deal and quote unquote lose it at the finish line. I'm often asked to conduct postmortems on deals where they chased it for several months, if not a year. And they'll say, so this is a deal we lost. We want you to dissect this for us. And I'll go through it and they'll say, oh, you didn't lose this deal. They'll look at me puzzled and say, well, we didn't win it. Now, that's true. You didn't win it, but you didn't lose it. You were never in the game. You were never a viable option. And if you would have asked these questions in the first 15 minutes of that first meeting, you would have recognized this was a deal to run from rather than invest countless hours, travel, putting proposals together, and everything else associated with getting to that finish line. Deal qualifying is one of the most underappreciated skills by both salespeople and executives. And if you look at what makes top salespeople so successful, one of those things is their investment of time. We all get the same number of minutes in our day. But what top talent do is they look at every deal and they're saying, should I or should I not go after it? Because there's all these other deals to be gotten. If I don't have a shot here, if I'm not well positioned or their requirements, what they're looking for, I'm not a match, well, then why am I going to waste a bunch of time just to hear no at the end? So that's what they do really well. And so, again, back to this discovery mindset related to that, one of the things that we do is we give salespeople an ideal client profile. If you have one of those, please throw it away. You don't want that. Here's why. An ideal client profile says if all the stars were to align, this is the kind of business we'd love to have. It's like a lottery ticket. It's a 1 in a gazillion chance that you'll ever stumble across one of these. Look up the word ideal in the dictionary. Existing only in one's mind. As if sales isn't hard enough. Now you're giving me a tool that's only in my head. But what every salesperson needs is a target client profile. And that's not wordsmithing. It's a totally different concept. A target client profile says, not if all the stars were to align, but rather, this is who will perceive the most meaningful value in what we offer, which gives deals the greatest likelihood of coming together. This becomes the foundation for qualifying, because now I know this is what that right opportunity looks like, feels like, tastes like. Here's the deal I'm looking at. What's the match or lack thereof between those two? And there's a chapter in the first meeting differentiator. Chapter 3 is dedicated to putting together your target client profile. It has 12 components. So again, an ideal client profile, it's like some random information. This is a structured tool that every salesperson needs to have in their hands.
So based on the target profile, you're able to match up if the prospect looks like them or not. And if they do, then you might be able to qualify a good opportunity. Can you give us a few tactical tips on asking intriguing questions in the qualification process? Like maybe show us an example of what that could look like.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's two types of questions that you're going to ask during first meetings. There's challenge questions and there's positioning questions. And I find most salespeople only ask the challenge type. Challenge questions expose aspects that they perceive could be better or different than what they have today. So like the magic wand question. Chris, what are 3 things you'd like to have you don't have today? It's an important question, great question. But if all you're asking are perception questions, how are you going to get around to talking about your differentiators? Because they don't know that those exist. So I live in Minnesota. Minnesota has a lot of idiosyncrasies. And one of those idiosyncrasies is every homeowner, every business contracts for their own trash removal. So on Wednesday mornings, there's a parade of garbage trucks coming down my street because everybody hires who they want. Each one seemingly doing the same thing. Pulls up to the home, arm extends out from the truck, grabs the can, lifts it up, dumps the contents in the truck, puts the can back down, truck drives away, you get an invoice at the end of the month. Well, the CEO of one of these companies reached out to me. He said, Lee, I believe we offer something meaningfully different. And I think my salespeople are unable to position those differentiators. And I thought about that because my office faces the street. So I see the parade every week. But it turns out that CEO was right. I did a workshop with them. And one of the differentiators that came out was they have this truck called a Can Be Clean truck. And they're the only ones in Minnesota with this truck. Twice a year, this truck follows the garbage truck and cleans your garbage cans for you. Only ones in the state of Minnesota that offer this. And it's included in your fee for service. So I'm watching what looks like commodity, every truck doing the same thing. And here they have this differentiator. So if I asked you, I said, Chris, what are 3 things you'd like to have from your trash solution that you don't have today? No one would say, gosh, I'd love it if someone cleaned my garbage cans, because they don't know it exists.
Yes.
So we developed a positioning question designed to expose that. It was asked very early on of a homeowner. Chris, when's the last time you had your garbage cans cleaned? Because we know they never have unless they did it themselves. And if you've ever had the privilege of cleaning your garbage cans, you know how miserable that experience is. And right in that moment, we've led someone to think differently about something as simple as a trash solution, not because of something we said, but rather a question that we've asked.
You asked a question that led them to brush up on a gap that you could
address
in a differentiated way.
Correct.
That's powerful. So it's not just about the perception questions, because there might be things they don't know that you can surface.
That's right.
To have the conversation. So, okay. This has been power packed. I have in my head a few more questions for you. And so because I mentioned the logically approaching discovery calls, and you're flipping it on its head saying that doesn't work in sales, and everyone knows it, but they still approach it in a logical way. And in fact, you need to create an emotional experience. And I would assume you're helping people run a differentiated consultation in first meeting. You have tips to help someone create a differentiated emotional experience. And so I'm just curious the difference between logical and emotional, and maybe a tip or two on like, what does it look like to create a differentiated emotional experience in the conversation?
Well, there's an expression that if you've been in sales for a day, you've heard. People buy based on emotion, justify their decisions with logic. Every salesperson on the planet has heard that expression. Now find one that actually does it. I'll bet you the deed to my house, Chris, that if we recorded 100 first meetings across all sale types, all market segments, all around the world, 99 of that 100, if not all 100, the entire conversation was logic. Every salesperson has heard the expression, people buy based on emotion, justify their decision with logic, and no one's doing it. And I really struggled with that. I'm like, why is no one doing it if they've all heard it? Then I had this epiphany. I have 2 sons that played college baseball. And I remember when they were first learning the game, and the coaches would say, now, Stephen and David, the name of the game is to hit home runs. Big smile, say, got it, hit home runs. You know something, Chris? They didn't hit home runs until they were taught how to hit home runs. So we've preached this concept to salespeople, but we haven't taught them how to do it. That's the flaw. And so in chapter 5 of the first meeting differentiator, I teach how to develop what I call empathetic expertise, how to properly engage emotion when selling.
Empathetic expertise, like that you can only influence by first understanding and connecting emotionally, right? And so do you have like one example of like in an interaction,
Sure,
building connection? Like I could volunteer some examples based on me reading psychology, but you're the expert, and I'd love just one example of building an emotional connection.
Okay, so here I'm going to give you 2 question scenarios. You ready?
Yes.
Chris, what's the biggest challenge you face in your business today? Now, based on that question, you're going to give me information back. I don't want information. I want color, flavor, texture. I want to know how you feel about the information you're sharing. So let's try that again. Chris, what's that one thing in your business that's like, oh, we got to figure this out. We've got to solve this. What is that issue? You felt that question, didn't you?
Yeah. And I'd say
this is just a podcast, so you can imagine how effective that is in the field.
Yeah. And I could give you an answer, right? It's like, I feel exhausted and I have these big priorities, but I can't get to them because all these day-to-day tasks. And that's one example, right? But I can feel it.
Yes. And so I want you to feel the question and I want to feel your response back. I'll give you another example. There's a chapter in the book. It's titled Features, Benefits, and Boredom. Because again, we've been told in a discovery, you share features and benefits. Well, if you're going to do that, bring a pillow because you're going to put him to sleep. No one wants to be lectured on your features and benefits. But everyone loves a well-told story. So rather than lecture on features and benefits, share client stories in an emotive way, not a factual statement, but an emotive way so that the person that's listening to it feels what you're sharing. Because if you want them to do something, they need to feel something. So we talked about that whole issue of inconvenience and problem. I need to motivate them to take action, to see this through the lens of a problem if they don't already do so themselves. And by engaging their emotion, that becomes the motivator to get them to tackle that issue.
So Lee, when I sold a cloud cost optimization software, and I talked to a company on AWS that was overspending, and we ended up helping them. When I went to another prospect and I said, I was talking to another VP of engineering just like you, and him and his team it hit them. They're overspending $10,000 a month on cloud.
Wow.
And he told me it felt like they were walking around with razor blades in their shoes.
You feel that, don't you?
How is that, Lee? Is that?
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. That's music right there.
Let's go. Is that a violin?
Yeah, that's awesome.
Okay. I think I have 2 more questions because I was going to ask you about storytelling, and that's why I was lighting up because you hit it before I even asked. That is so important. Okay.
By the way, that is what you just said. That's empathetic expertise. See, the measurement of empathetic expertise is 3 words. They get me. So whenever you ask a question where that was on their mind, and they go, oh, I was going to ask you that. Oh, he understands me, meaning he gets me. And that's how we talk about building relationships.
That's huge too, because Lee, we can incorporate that into our outbound. So it's like basically what you're giving us for the first consultation, that can be pulled into messaging for any of the SDRs watching this. They're trying to proactively learn how to run the first consultation.
Absolutely.
But they can use this today to get more meetings, to show the empathy where it goes off in the mind of the prospect and even the C-level, like, wow, they get me. It's going to be worth my time. So Lee, I wanted to tie a bow on running the first consultation. I said the word in my head, but I didn't say it. How do you close? How do you set the next steps? And I know you have this term called it's something cliffhanger.
Yes.
But how do we close for the next steps?
Okay. So remember, the overarching objective is to peak a high enough level of interest that they want to continue engaging with us afterwards.
Yep.
So let's say the meeting has gone well. And we talked earlier about meaningful value. So there's a self-test you're going to give. So this is a test for you in sales. and you're going to ask them this question. If you believe the meeting has gone well, so Chris, how did we do today? I want to hear back, you know what, this was such a great use of time. I'm so glad we got together, because that tells me I provided meaningful value with them. That's super important as a starter. Another one is, and I would start with this one, thank them. Gosh, it's, mom and dad taught us the importance of manners, and we don't do this enough. They put 400 things aside to invest time, not spend time, but invest time with us. So thank them for doing that. That's another piece. And then if the meeting's gone well, there's only one acceptable ending to it. A defined next step and a scheduled next interaction. In discovery, what we would do is say, so Chris, what do you see as our next best step? What should we do next? Well, who has an expertise in bringing deals to fruition, us or them? It's us. At least I hope that's us. So we can't ask them that question. This is our expertise, and people like to follow experts. So, Chris, given what we talked about here today, what I recommend we do next is blank. What are your thoughts? We are the expert. We are the ones that have to be giving the recommendations to them to guide this process forward. And we need to schedule that next interaction right then and there. I'm asked all the time, Lee, what's your secret to avoid ghosting? And I'll tell you what it is. Every single step of your sales process finishes with a defined next step and a scheduled next interaction. Everybody's calendar is sitting right here. You've piqued their interest. Emotion is high. They're intrigued. That's when you schedule that next meeting. Because so often I see, you know what, Chris, I'll follow up with you next week and we'll find a time to pick up the conversation or schedule the presentation, schedule the demo. No, everybody's together. Right now, we're going to get this on the calendar and send an invite for it. That is one thing that will incredibly reduce the amount of ghosting you experience. It's in their calendar. If that meeting's gone well, the likelihood that they'll be there is extremely high.
Lee, I'm sneaking one more question in.
Okay.
On the book, because I thought I saw you had this, like, it seems so cool. I'm not getting right, but the cliffhanger term. And so can you just pique a little curiosity on what, because that's your own, like, just like empathetic expertise, like your own TM, like signature thing. So.
Consultation cliffhangers is what you're referring to.
Okay.
And I borrowed from the TV and movie world. If you think about what they do at the end of a season, is that last episode, they have a cliffhanger. Something unresolved happens in that episode. And the purpose of that is to get you back watching the next episode and the next season. That's their objective. Imagine we borrowed from them and applied that to sales. Remember, I said we don't have to ask them everything. We don't need to tell them everything, nor should we.
Yes.
Because there's this study that was done in the late 1800s. Do you know the name Hermann Ebbinghaus?
Sounds familiar.
Okay. He developed what's known as the forgetting curve.
I've heard of that.
Okay. What he found was, and it's still valid today, done in the late 1800s, people forget 50% of what they learn within 24 hours. Remember less than 10% a week later. So let's do this math. You have a 1 hour first meeting. They remember about 6 minutes of it a week later. That's pain. That's pain. So what I see salespeople doing is trying to do too much in the first meeting. Ask every question, tell them everything. Let's get a demo in. Let me show you a slide deck. Oh, by the way, I brought my CEO with me. Oh, I brought my operations person in, my customer service person in, and the implementation person in. They remember 6 minutes of that experience. So my counsel is to pace the process. Pace the process. You don't have to ask everything. You don't need to tell them everything. You don't need to show them everything. As I mentioned earlier, we talked about the recipe. What's the right things to do in that first meeting, which is reverse engineering it. So now we use a consultation cliffhanger where the demo, that's the next meeting. The presentation, that's a later meeting. Meeting some more executives, that's a later meeting. Pace the process so you build the retention and then they're excited to work with you.
That's a message that I could have used 10 years ago when I started out at Oracle.
Pace the process.
That is really good, because I'm a guy that I want to bring value. I want to say it all, but that's actually not going to help us, right? No. Pace the process. So Lee, this conversation was power packed. I'm excited to float this out into the YouTube Sea, and to the audience. You guys need to watch us not once, but twice, but most importantly, get the book, The First Meeting Differentiator. It's linked in the description of this video. And you mentioned a couple of other assets. Actually, it was meaningful value. Yep. Okay. We've got that. And then don't you have a download as well for The First Meeting Differentiator, Lee?
I do. If you go to firstmeetingbook.com, you can download the first chapter for free. And then wherever you buy the book, Amazon, your favorite bookstore, Barnes & Noble, whatever that might be, go back to that website, firstmeetingbook.com. I'm offering a bonus to book purchasers, 3 masterclasses based on the book content to help you implement what you read.
And Lee, I got to do it, man. I got to ask you about bench pressing. You were a state champion. This is the final question, but didn't you win? Okay. Is it in like Minnesota, like state champion bench press? And I feel like you overcame some obstacles to get there. So can you leave us with some final inspiration?
Sure. So I'm 56 years old. I've been competing in powerlifting, specifically the bench press, since the year 2000. And I've had a number of injuries along the way. I ruptured my tricep about 6 years ago. Was told, yeah, you're not competing again. Came back and did that. And then this past year, just before the state tournament, a month before, I tore my rotator cuff and was still able to compete and thankfully win. And I just signed up yesterday for the 2026 state tournament.
Unreal. Thanks for inspiring us to also take care of our physical body and mind, because that definitely is its way into what we do. And funny enough, today I just came from bench pressing. I did the incline bench because I'm trying to get super pecs. Maybe more for aesthetics. But Lee, I can't wait to give you a hug in person one day. If you're ever in Florida, I'm coming out to you. And we can't tell now, but I bet you're friggin' huge, man. Thank you. And to the audience, thank you for showing up. I respect you for investing in your personal and professional development to your success in sales and in life. Happy selling and happy living. And we'll see you in the next one.